Have you ever had a big exam coming up, and instead of studying, you suddenly feel the overwhelming urge to clean your room? Or maybe you decide to organize your entire wardrobe by color or rearrange your bookshelf? That's happened to Ahmed too. A week before his finals, he was doing everything except studying. He was watching study tips, creating detailed schedules, but when it came down to actually solving past papers or learning the hard concepts, he froze. And I said to him, Ahmed, stop wasting time on things that don't matter. Let's talk about something that can change the way you look at everything, the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule, also known as Pareto's Principle, was discovered by an economist named Vilfredo Pareto in 1896. What he noticed was shocking. He found that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by just 20% of the people. And that's not just a coincidence. This pattern repeated itself over and over again in different industries, countries, and even in nature. So, when you hear 80-20 rule, think about how 20% of your efforts create 80% of your results. Now, this is where things get interesting. You might think, I need to work harder to achieve success. But the 80-20 rule says you don't need to do everything. Just focus on the right things. Let's break it down. In business, 80% of your sales come from just 20% of your customers. In relationships, 80% of your happiness comes from 20% of the people you spend time with. In fitness, 80% of the results come from just 20% of your exercises. And in your workday, 80% of your productivity comes from just 20% of the tasks you do. You see the pattern? Most of what we do doesn't actually push us forward. The question is, what's your 20%? Let's talk about one of the richest men on the planet, Warren Buffett. His success didn't come from spreading his efforts across dozens of businesses. In fact, he focused only on a few investments that brought in the majority of his wealth. How did he do this? Buffett's strategy is simple. He only invests in the 20% of businesses that show real potential. He looks at companies and analyzes them carefully, making sure that his investment will provide consistent returns with less risk. Buffett didn't go for everything. He went for the few businesses that would bring him 80% of his wealth. This isn't just about investing. It's about focus. Warren Buffett once said, "The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything." What does that mean? He wasn't distracted by every opportunity. He focused on the 20% that really mattered. Imagine if you took this approach in your own life. What if you cut out the distractions and focused only on the 20% of things that truly brought value? Would you be more successful? Here's another example. Tim Ferriss, the author of The 4-Hour Workweek. In his book, he talks about how he used the 80-20 rule to completely redesign his work life. Tim realized that 80% of his results were coming from just 20% of his work activities. For instance, Tim used to handle hundreds of emails and meetings, but he realized 80% of those emails didn't even matter. They didn't help him reach his goals. So, he cut them out. He also eliminated unnecessary meetings, freeing up time to focus on the 20% of things that brought in the most revenue and success. By cutting the noise, Tim built a business that allowed him to travel the world, work from anywhere, and live life on his terms. This is the true power of the 80-20 rule. It's about working smarter, not harder. Now let's talk about how you might be applying this without even realizing it. When you look at your day, think about this. What's that one thing you do every day that makes you feel like you're not getting ahead? What task do you always put off because it feels too big or too complicated? And yet, you're wasting your time on things that don't matter as much. The reason this happens is because we tend to focus on what's easy. We spend time on tasks that make us feel busy, but that don't really move the needle forward. This is what happens when you spend 80% of your time on tasks that only give you 20% of the results. Instead, ask yourself, what's the 20% of tasks that will actually bring you closer to your goals? So, how do you apply this rule to your own life? Here's a simple 3-step process. Look at your current actions. Identify which 20% of your efforts are making the biggest impact. In business, which customers are bringing in most of your revenue? In fitness, which workouts are giving you the best results? In relationships, which people are making you the happiest? Once you know your 20%, eliminate the other 80% that's not bringing value. Reduce unnecessary meetings. Stop checking emails every 5 minutes. Let go of tasks that only give you minimal returns. Double down on your strengths. Focus more of your time and energy on the things that matter. When you do this, you'll see real results in your life. The 80-20 rule isn't just some theory, it's a way of life. It's been used by successful people like Warren Buffett, Tim Ferriss, and so many others to streamline their success. So, next time you're feeling overwhelmed by your to-do list, remember this. Focus on the 20%. Find the things that matter the most and spend your time there. It's not about doing more, it's about doing less but better. And hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting videos. See you in the next one.